Welcome back to the European Market Open. A minute to go until the start of cash equities trading. Here are your headlines. Company earnings drive Wall Street. The S&P 500 sees its biggest back-to-back gain in 2 months. Guidance on stimulus. The ECB holds the first policy meeting since overhauling its strategy. Investors watch for any tweaks to Lagarde's toolkit. And getting a raise. UBS is boosting pay for junior bankers following rivals in trying to retain younger talent. We'll bring you all the details. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the second hour of the European Market Open. Let's take you straight to the futures picture. And we wobbled a little bit here in London. The futures picture had struggled to stay in positive territory, but now we seem to have managed to achieve that, up by 1/8% or so for FTSE futures. DAX and CAC futures a little bit stronger. We have plenty of earnings to talk about this morning, many earnings narratives to feed in here. How much is the inflation story a worry? How much is it giving the businesses that are listed, that we're talking to, pricing power? All of that is crucial to the conversation, it would seem, right now. How temporary will that push up in inflation pressures be, or how sustained? Something we will pick up, no doubt, with our next guest. So let's get into the markets then. The FTSE 100 opening fairly flat this morning, so we are expecting perhaps to see the other markets pick up a little more. The FTSE up by 0.1%. The IBEX over in Spain up by 0.5%. The CAC 40 up by 0.5% as well, as we factor in some of these earnings stories and keep an eye on the individual stocks we were watching just ahead of the break. I can see that Unilever down by 2.9% as a result of the earnings story, or the margin story specifically coming through there. NatWest down by around 1% on the back of the news that the government is going to be selling a stake. So there's lots to talk about on the individual stocks. We'll get to that shortly. Big picture, though, is that European equity markets continue the rebound from Monday's selling, and we are up by around 0.5% on the stock 600. Let's get back to the earnings story, and the Swiss fragrance maker Givaudan has beaten estimates for the first half of the year. It saw strong demand for some of its scents in the second quarter after a sharp drop during the early stages of the pandemic. Joining us now is Gilles Andrier, the CEO of Givaudan. Very nice to speak to you, Gilles. Thanks for coming to talk to us. So you seem to have beaten estimates on a number of metrics, maybe sales a little lighter than anticipated, but still up 4.7% year on year. What is sustainable about the performance you have delivered this morning?
Yeah, on a like-for-like basis, meaning outside currency, we are plus 8%, which is a very strong result. And this is also on the back of still a growth of 4% that we had in the first half of last year. So the comparable was not that easy. So we have seen a very sharp rebound of the fine fragrances business, which represents 10% of our sales, which is up very significantly, and which puts the fine fragrance business actually 13% above the 2019 pre-pandemic level. And we have seen other spaces which are more resilient around home care, fabric care, personal care, but also all the food being eaten at home, also up, continues to be up on the back of a double-digit growth that we had during the first half of 2020. So I would say all the segments and regions are growing and supporting this very good result.
What do you think it is that's driven fragrance and beauty to a performance that is better than 2019? Because I know people are going out, but maybe not as much as they did everywhere. So what's the story there, Gilles?
Well, beauty is important whether you go out or you stay home. So, you know, essentially, I think what has happened to our surprise, because you could argue with 30% of fine fragrance sales being sold in airports, you know, the duty free, and people not traveling. Obviously, that's a whole channel which has been depressed since the start of the pandemic. Well, somehow that has been compensated, I would say replaced by consumers actually consuming more in brick and mortar stores, the ones which opened early in 2021, but also the e-commerce for our clients has rebounded, has grown very significantly, sort of replacing and substituting to the duty free. So the net is that we have a very sharp positive growth vis-a-vis 19. But also what's interesting is that the whole, what we call the active beauty, which are all those ingredients going into skincare, making the skin younger, more beautiful. Well, all of those, this segment is also double-digit, you know, growth. So beauty is important wherever you are.
Okay, nice message this morning. Let me ask you about food service, the reopening of some of those food service venues then, Gilles. What are you assuming about out-of-home dining, especially if not everybody is going to return to the office 5 days a week? What kind of assumptions are you making in that part of the business?
Yeah, the food service is also the other part of Givaudan, more in the taste and well-being business, which, like fine, you know, last year was quite depressed because bars, restaurants obviously were closed. But the rebound actually didn't happen in the first quarter of this year because you still had a lot of, again, restaurants out of home eating, which were closed. So it was a bit of a sort of 1 quarter later, you know, than fine fragrance actually started to rebound. So the second quarter for food service has seen a sharp rebound. But still, events, corporate events, traveling, and all of that are still not happening. So the food service is not rebounding at the same speed as the fine fragrance. But this is going to come. But in any case, in our business, what you don't eat outside, you eat at home. So somehow we are still the food service business is still compensated by a sharp increase of at-home consumption, and also
well, indeed,
in the taste and well, yeah.
Yeah, you have to eat somewhere. Let me ask you about the raw material inflation. This is quite a theme at the moment. A lot of CEOs talking to us about the price of raw materials. What are you seeing there, Gilles, and how much can you pass that on to your customers?
So for sure, we see a lot of commodities around us, from sugar to crude oil and so on, which are sharply increasing with inflation. But in our case, we buy highly specialized ingredients, natural ingredients all around the world, which are, again, extremely specific to our industry. And so overall, we see a 1% raw material increase for 2021. So it doesn't mean that it will stay at this level going forward, but still for 2021, the inflation has been strongly contained.
You talk about the specialist ingredients that you acquire there, Gilles. Have you had any difficulties getting hold of those? Any supply chain issues due to the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, for sure. We had a few containers